I am in Bogota, and is it safe? That's the topic of today's video. So I've been to lots of large cities in South America and Central America. I guess from the backline, Santiago, Buenos Aires, Lima, La Paz. We could throw Rio in there as well. Guatemala City, Mexico City. So this is not my first rodeo going to a large Spanish-speaking city with a little bit of a safety cloud. But before I came here, I Googled is Bogota safe? And I came up with a few hits and read through these blogs, and goodness me, it was like they were describing Escape from New York, if you can remember that movie from back in the 80s. Really quite bizarre. But, I hadn't been here before, so maybe they were right. Maybe that is the way it is. But, I'm here now, so I've got an opinion. And then later on in this video, I'll also give you my 2 rules for reducing risk when you're traveling. So one of the things in these videos, and you'll see this common for most cities that you're Googling for some information prior to arriving, people will tell you to stick to safe zones, and they'll outline the neighbourhoods or suburbs or zones in a particular city that are deemed safe for tourism or for tourists. Most of those places are safe, and it turns out that you're not going to want to go to anywhere outside of those areas anyway, because as a tourist, all the tourist things that you want to see and do are in those areas. In some cities, they'll take you to favelas and poor areas, and I've never really been into that. To me, that's like treating poor people like they're in a zoo. Why do you want to go and visit those areas? So that's not me. Stick to the safe zones. So that was one of the things in the blogs I read, and there was 3 that had me sort of raising my eyebrows. I'll give that one a tick. I mean, that is fair advice. The next one was don't hail taxis off the street, because what can happen, a lot of these taxis are dodgy, and you might find yourself getting in, doors get locked, taxi will drive you somewhere, doors will be unlocked, someone else will get in, or several people will get in, take you to an ATM, force you to extract money, and or just rob you on the spot. Is that likely to happen? Who knows? I mean, I'm not saying it's never happened. It probably has happened. It's probably happened in lots of cities. For me, I'm not going to be using taxis, and I haven't used taxis in Bogota, but not from the safety concerns, more because I haven't had to use the local currency since I've been here, putting everything on my card. I'm assuming that taxis, you have to pay cash. That's just my assumption. The other thing is my Spanish is really deplorable. At best, you could say it's at about the level of a 1.5-year-old or a 2-year-old. I know words without grammar and so on, and combined with pointing, I can generally get by, but I don't feel inclined to want to have to negotiate fares and all that sort of stuff by getting in a taxi. So for me, Uber is my vehicle of choice for getting from A to B if I need a vehicle. The fare's declared up front. The driver knows where you want to go, and we know how much it's going to cost, so that's my preferred method. It's not my preferred method of transport. I mean, generally, I prefer to walk everywhere, to be honest. And I try to do that. Now, that's not always possible because of distances or because of weather. Plan B for me is then metro trains, getting on a metro and getting from A to B that way. Now, Bogota doesn't have a train system. Plan C would then be Ubers rather than taxis, and then Plan D, buses. Bogota's got heaps of buses. I'm not a big bus fan. I've never have been a big bus fan. I have used them at times. When I was up in Mexico City, in my video about that, I did use buses a few times, and I described how they work up there, but not a big fan. I prefer to walk number 1, trains number 2, urban number 3. Now, in the blogs I read, they did say that buses were safe during the day, but possibly or potentially a little bit dodgy at night. I mean, most things are a little bit dodgy at night, to be honest. That was the overall assessment of bus travel. So taxis was a big no-no. Don't use taxis. Use buses, but be aware of pickpockets, which is the next thing I'll mention. And in one of the blogs there, they mentioned that Colombia was like the world champions of pickpocketing. I don't know how true that is. And they're saying even if you've got zippered pockets, they're going to get into them, which, yeah, I don't know. Don't have your backpacks, don't wear your backpacks on your back. Wear them on your front so no one can rifle through your backpacks without you knowing. Well, a few things about that. Firstly, unless you are standing in, say, a crowded bus where you're shoulder to shoulder with somebody, or perhaps standing at some traffic lights perfectly still and it might be crowded, you're sort of, again, shoulder to shoulder with somebody waiting for the lights to change. I can't really see how a pickpocket's going to get into your zippered pocket. I think that must be a huge exaggeration. Maybe it happened to someone once and this became an urban myth, but I'm not buying it. I could see it potentially happening again, as I said, on a bus if you're shoulder to shoulder and not sort of aware of what's going on. To me, that's hyperbole in spades. It's a huge exaggeration. Another word of warning for Bogota was don't take your phone out and look at your phone on the street. So if you've got to check Google Maps to see where you're going, where you've got to do something like that, you got to go online to look something up. Don't just stop in the street and do it. Look for a little quiet area or go into a building or something like that, which, you read this and you think to yourself, wow, where am I going? What sort of city am I arriving to? I'm basically calling bulldozer on all of this, having been here for nearly a week. Let's work backwards. Phones are as common here and everywhere else I've been, in Central America and South America. Phones are as common here, particularly in, for, say, people 30 and under, as they are anywhere else in the world. Everyone's got a phone and everyone's walking around looking at their phone, just as they are in the West. I mean, fair income. It's no different. People are on their phones everywhere. Young people, not so much old people, but certainly young people. Old people will be on their phones making calls, whereas young people will just be on their phones chatting or Facebooking or Instagramming or whatever else they're doing as they're walking along. And frustratingly, just getting in your way when you're trying to walk from A to B while they're looking at their phones. So when you're here, use your phone. If you want to get from A to B and you want to check Google Maps, use your phone. Now, the other thing to think about, if people were wandering around stealing phones all the time, what's the market for the stolen phones when everyone has a phone? Doesn't make sense. Now, a lot of these people that are walking around on their phones have got their backpacks on their backs where they should be. So this whole nonsense that you've got to have your backpacks on your front is just ridiculous. So overall, how does Bogota compare to all the other cities I mentioned at the start that I've been to? No more risky, no less risky. I'm pretty much the same. Guatemala City's probably a bit of an outlier, and I suppose probably Lima as well. I haven't been to Lima for 10 years, but I'll be there in a couple of weeks. But I don't see any differences. I don't see any large safety concerns. You can do your normal thing here like you would in any other city. Use your phone, walk around with a backpack with your stuff in it, and just go about your business, because that's what everyone else here is doing. So if you're thinking of coming here and you do a little bit of research, don't be scared by hysterical assessments of the safety risks here. That's not to say there isn't crime. There's crime everywhere. And, so not saying that, just saying that this isn't any different to any other city that I've been to. So when you're coming here or when you're coming to any large city, two rules for me. Number one, don't do dumb stuff. Okay. Common sense is not all that common. So if you don't want to be a target for pickpockets and all that sort of thing, don't dress ostentatiously. Dress, if you're unsure, have a look around when you get here, see how people dress and dress similarly. Try to blend in. Don't do dumb stuff. If you're young, dumb stuff means getting on the P155, walking out of a bar or a restaurant or something in the early hours or the late hours of the evening, and drunk or half drunk or whatever, and you're just placing yourself in a risky position in that sort of environment. In daylight hours, just be aware of your surroundings and just take note. And stick to areas that are considered safe for tourists to go. So what areas would you consider safe? Well, most of the areas where there are significant museums and landmarks and all those sort of things are going to be safe for tourists. Most large cities also have specific tourist police guarding those areas because they want tourists to come. They don't want tourists to be scared of being there. In terms of where to stay, you'll generally find good advice in various forums and travel groups. Notwithstanding that I missed out when I Googled, is Bogota safe? I seemed to hit on 3 blogs that were just hysterical nonsense. But my rule of thumb is stay in areas where people walk dogs. Dog walking areas are generally very safe. Now, you're probably not going to know that in advance. I don't think you can Google which areas of Bogota do people walk dogs or which areas of Lima do people walk dogs. But maybe after you've been here a couple of days, if you're planning on an extended stay, you might get a feel for what areas our furry friends are being walked from day to day. And so I'm in an area where people are walking dogs all the time. And they generally have backpacks and using their phone at the same time. So how about that? So overall, my take home is if you're thinking of coming to Bogota, come. Don't be scared of anything that you're reading. It's no different to any large city in South America or Central America, safer than some I've been to, in my opinion. The 2 rules: don't do dumb stuff, don't put a target on your back, and try and look for areas where to stay where people walk dogs. They'll be generally nice areas, and the people in those areas will be nice people because dog owners are generally nice people in my experience. So with that, hope you enjoyed this brief video. Hope you come to Bogota one day, and don't forget to like and subscribe.